Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the IAM CX Podcast. My name is Roger Nicholas, Director of Customer Experience at Island Analytics and Marketing. And we have a really top-notch guest for you today. Only the best for our guests, okay? So we're going to introduce you to Eric Smuda. He's going to help us understand how customer experience can solve key operational issues in multi-unit environments, okay? So I know my Caribbean audience will be very excited to hear about this because we have a lot of chains there. And I have a lot of friends and listeners coming in from the rest of the world who are into the multi-unit space as well. So let me tell you a little bit about the Eric Smuda, okay? Eric Smuda has built his distinguished career based on the belief that taking care of customers to drive organic growth is the most reliable way to help companies succeed. So in his various roles, he's focused on translating the voice of the customer into operational improvements, new product and service introductions, and transformational customer experiences that have led to market share growth, revenue growth, and profitability growth. Over the past 15 years, he's been a customer experience leader for 2 award-winning travel and hospitality companies and a customer experience consultant for numerous companies across industries like retail, entertainment, hospitality, travel, high-tech, and financial software industries. And the list of companies include, these are the heavy hitters. Like I said, only the best for our guests, all right? We're talking about companies like Hertz, Avis, Budget Rent-A-Car, Hewlett Packard, Walgreens, Duke Energy, Humana Health, Mattress Firm, Enterprise, and TopGolf for you golfers out there, among others. So Mr. Smuda is a recognized voice of customer and customer experience thought leader with over 100 media quotes, webinars, podcasts, white papers, blog posts, and conference presentations. And what I think is a huge honor, he's also been a member of Bain & Company's exclusive NPS forum that focuses on the best practices and sharing those best practices for the Net Promoter System implementations and programs. And for those of you who do not know, Bain & Company were a part of the teams that founded the concept of the Net Promoter Score and the Net Promoter System, along with a company by the name of Satmetrics that was led by Fred Reichel and Rob Markey. So this is a big deal to be a part of a forum like that. So let's give our love and welcome to Eric Smuda. Eric, you can take your bow. Yeah. All right,
Thank you, Roger. I need you to be my personal PR person. It makes you feel good when you hear all that. So,
hey man, hey, look, I try to stay humble myself. So when I hear anything good about me, I usually get shocked a bit. But the truth is, we need to celebrate people when they're here and not after they're gone. So
absolutely great to be here. I appreciate the invitation and I'm looking forward to being here with your audience today and sharing what I can with them.
All right, great. So let's dive in. So I like to open with this. This is what made you say, I want to do that question? All right. So tell us a little bit about your career journey and what kind of first sparked your awareness or interest in customer experience strategy as a business solution.
Yeah, no, great question. And you hit on it a little bit in my intro, right? Because I said my belief that taking care of customers is the best way to grow a business. Mm-hmm. I believed that since I was a child. My dad was in market research. I watched him pouring through old tab books and writing reports. But what really stuck with me all the time was, what is he learning about customers that are going to help this business grow? And so that's why that's really been the thread that's run through my career. And so I'm a research brat, right? I started in market research.
Okay.
And I quickly realized, I like this, but it's not really what I want to do. And what I really want to do is, how do I help businesses get better? How do I help businesses grow and drive revenue growth, drive profitability growth? But like anybody early in a career, you can't just jump from one spot to another. So I used the market research skills to get into the voice of the customer world.
Okay.
Was leading a global voice of the customer program for Compaq Computer Corporation, for those in the audience who knew that at the time, right?
Yes.
They got bought by HP eventually.
Right. Yes.
And then used that to open my own consultancy around voice of the customer and really helping organizations grow. And that led to the Avis job. You mentioned Avis earlier in there. And so that led to being the head of CX for Avis Budget Group.
Okay.
And did that for 3 years, really helped drive significant growth there that I know we'll talk about over the course of this podcast. And then switched teams. I got traded from the red team to the gold team.
Oh, tisk, Eric, tisk.
Yeah, hey, sometimes you got to trade up, right?
It's like going from Washington Commanders to Dallas Cowboys. It's almost sin.
Oh yeah, for sure. But Hertz was an interesting experience, and I know we'll talk about it here, but what was interesting about it is I've always had the belief that communication is as critical a part of the customer experience as the experience itself. The CMO that I worked with at Hertz believed that as well. And so not only did I own CX, I also owned the CRM team, because we really believe right message to the right person at the right time, right? Really can drive your customer experience because you're setting the expectations. So
yes.
That's what got me into the CX practitioner world, if you will.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Now, multi-unit environments tend to have some unique challenges compared to other types of business models. Can you share what was some of the operational challenges you witnessed in the multi-unit space among the different brands? Because I'm assuming that the Avis and Budget would have the same challenges as a Hertz. Could you give us like a couple examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's several that I could point to, right? One is probably not unique to the multi-unit environment. I think it's probably true of any business, but I think it bears saying, and that's coordination. Right? How do you coordinate what marketing is doing, what sales is doing, what the digital team is doing versus what operations has to deliver and what customer service has to clean up, right?
Across a large footprint.
Marketing, right? Marketing is setting the expectations. Here's what we're about. Here's the brand that we're trying to create.
Right.
Well, operations has to execute that and deliver on that brand promise.
Right.
So do we have alignment between marketing and operations, right? Is in a B2B world, is sales selling this properly? Are they setting the right expectation with the customer, or are they kind of setting the bar a little bit too high and the product or the service and operations can't
deliver
that? So I think coordinating those things, that's a problem in any business, but get into multi-unit environments, now you're multiplying that by 10 or 100 or 1,000, right?
Yes.
So coordination is one. Consistency is another big one, right? Because, hey, how do you create that experience that's the same whether you're in Dallas, whether you're in New York, whether you're in Miami, or whether you're in Portugal, right?
Right, yes.
But the Hertz brand means something, so how do you deliver that Hertz experience
everywhere?
Across all of these units and do it the same way everywhere, because that's what people expect. I think the third thing, especially in the multi-unit environment that matters, is the quality of people. Ultimately, your experience comes down to the people, right?
Who you touch.
Yeah, and one of the things I learned in the multi-unit environment particularly was the head of the unit, right? So whether it was a rental car operation, whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's a hotel, the general manager sets the tone. And the speed of the team runs.
It's the speed of the leader. My favorite quote for one of my favorite movies, by the way. Do you know what movie I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
That is the movie where Denzel coached a high school football team in a racist town.
Oh, Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans. That was a major line in that movie. The speed of the leader is the speed of the team.
Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah. But the quality of the leader also matters. And so, in those multi-unit environments, we could see the poor performing locations were the ones where the general manager needed some training or
skilling.
So I think those are the big three, because the reality of the multi-unit business, and I think I mentioned it, customer expectations are the same. Right? They don't care if they're the McDonald's on 3rd Street or the McDonald's on Washington Avenue. McDonald's, to them, they have the same expectations. And so being able to deliver equally across locations is critical.
Okay. So I heard coordination. I heard consistency, and I heard the skill of the team, especially the skill of the leader of that team.
And
As
the
things,
frontline people. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, great, great. I appreciate that. And I think our audience will as well, because, and the question is slightly tricky, right?
But before you
So,
move to the next question, let me hit on that quality of people thing real quick, because
okay.
you sparked a thought. We had a saying when I was at Avis, hire the smile. And what that really meant was hire the person that has a predisposition to great customer service, great customer experience. You're going to have to train them how to run your business. You're going to have to train them on your process.
But hire the smile.
Person that's got the predisposition to delivering great service.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. It's I expected you to organically say things that are common across multiple businesses, multiple types of business models. So that was the slight hidden trick there. I didn't want to be non-transparent to you, right? but I want our audience to understand that as much as you may hear about customer experience strategy for the first time, the third time, or the 300th time, it is very transferable across many industries, whether it's business to consumer or business to business. So I didn't want them to miss that. And you did excellently without being, prodded. So that's awesome.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So the next thing I wanted to do was, since this is the multi-unit episode, how can applying customer experience strategy address these issues? Do you mind offering a couple of examples? So for instance, what are some challenges companies have in executing good CX strategy in this type of business model?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of great examples, because I think, as I said, customer experience expectations travel with them across all these locations. Well, okay, so how do I know what the customer knows? How do I know what the customer's preferences are? How do I transfer that from location to location? And that's difficult. So I'll give you a great example from my days in Avis. Avis's loyalty program has a premier tier, a kind of a the white glove hand holding tier at the top of their loyalty program.
Right.
And we had a woman in San Francisco's airport who was in charge of coordinating service for these premier members. She had a Rolodex on her phone. She knew their spouses, she knew their birthdays, she knew what cars they wanted to drive. They knew she knew the makes and models that they liked, and she knew the makes and models that they hated to make sure that they never got it. Well, she delivered fantastic customer experience, right? And we would see it in the surveys all the time. Hey, she's great, she's great, she's great. How do I transfer that knowledge, right? How do I get that out of her head and out of her phone
and make that systemic
with everybody? Because those people that are traveling in San Francisco, they go to Phoenix, they go to Miami, they go to New York. Right. And so what we really worked on was, how do we capture customer preferences and put those in a way that all of the front line across the entire organization could tap into that, so that when Roger's not going into San Francisco, but he's actually going into Atlanta instead, someone can pull up, I know this is the type of car Roger wants to drive, and make sure it's ready. So
that's a huge nugget. That's a huge nugget, Eric.
Preferences and sharing that knowledge is critical.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's something, if I may embarrassingly say, it's a little lost for us in the Caribbean. The buying into, I don't say it in a mean way. I just mean that where we are in business strategy we're not there yet, where we believe or buy into the idea of consistently capturing customer understanding. And so as a result, we don't have an infrastructure designed to do that. So we miss the opportunity to know what the customer really wants, and then we miss the opportunity to design a journey or experience that they really want, which will increase their loyalty, which will increase their referrals, which will increase their cross-sells and upsells.
And I apologize for interrupting it.
Oh, that's fine.
It doesn't have to be high tech, though, right? One of the things we did at both Avis and Hertz, we just used our post-transaction survey and said, hey, how happy were you with our experience? How happy were you with the car you drove? Well, operationally, we knew what car they drove.
Right.
So we could pair that information with their satisfaction score and then put that into their customer profile and say, they like this, they don't like that.
Right.
Look, at a more basic level, you can use a Google document or you can use Excel. Look, you have wonderful service people throughout the Caribbean. I've been to many islands. I've had fantastic service experiences, right?
Thank you.
Right. And some of that is cultural, but some of that's individual. So how do you capture that from the individual?
Mm-hmm.
Put it in Excel, put it in a Google sheet where all of your locations can tap into that information. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend millions on Salesforce or something like that.
Yeah.
It's still about how do I listen to my customer? How do I understand their preferences, their likes and dislikes, and how do I share that with my peers? And it can be low tech, it can be carrier pigeon, right?
Yeah. Here's the value in you sharing that, Eric. You see, a lot of our audience are entrepreneurs, and so we try to start the conversation about customer experience with small business owners or entrepreneurs, and sometimes one of the first things they think is, well, that's for bigger companies. I may not be able to do that, or it may cost a lot. Excuse me one second. So what you just said there is you just let them know, for those who are listening, that there are ways you can simplify and do the low budget approach based on where your business is, and then let that scale as you scale. And so that's something we're trying to communicate as well. So again, unprodded, you have done magic in helping our audience understand that CX strategy is for everyone, regardless of the size of your business. So you just have to know what you know where you're headed, and know what your goals are, and how to take action on the information that you capture, because that's another thing that's lost on us in the Caribbean. We're not in the habit of capturing feedback, and we're certainly not in the habit of taking very much action on that feedback, because it becomes about scores. And we'll talk about that later, because that's a major question for me.
We will.
Right. But let me ask you this then. So this one is a quote from your article. All right. The article that you wrote on NPS. Stop focusing on the score and drive business growth instead. So it was a great segue. Man, I look like a professional interviewer here. Look like Oprah.
Of course you are.
I look like a hard-faced Oprah. Okay, so NPS is the most misunderstood and misused management tool in business. Criticisms fixate on the wrong thing and reinforce the focus on surveys. And they miss the point of NPS. It is about building a growth engine for your company by creating a learning culture singularly focused on customer needs, wants, and expectations, and driving continuous improvement. So tell our audience, what did you mean by that? Because that's a mouthful. There's a whole lot of nuggets in there. And then just expand on it for us.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously some out there who aren't fans of NPS will say, oh, I'm just being an NPS apologist. And here's what I would say, right? It's not about the survey. It's not about the score. When I was at Avis or Hertz, the operators would walk up to me and say, hey, did you see I got my score to 32? I'm like, no, I didn't see that. And I don't care that you got it to 32.
Yeah.
What I care about, and here's the beauty of NPS, right? It's not about the score. It's about that second question that says, why did you rate us this way? That's where customers are telling you, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, here's what I need, here's what I want in the future, here's my preferences. Right? And so that's where learning has to happen, right? Listening and learning. And if you do enough of that listening and learning, and I know we're going to get to this here in the next question probably in a minute, but start sharing that knowledge. Right? If you run a restaurant, have the waiters and waitresses, they pick up that knowledge. Well, let's have a little huddle. Let's have a staff meeting and let's share that knowledge. Yeah. And then let's think about, okay, now that we have that knowledge, what do we need to improve in our business? Right? And so that's what I mean. It's like, look, I don't care what your score is. Now, I want to see it improving.
Yes.
But when I see it improving, it's because I know you're listening to your customers, you're learning what they want,
and taking corrective action.
You're changing your business because of that information. So
Yes.
that's what I mean about, you really want to create a learning culture.
Mm-hmm.
You want to create a culture around continuous improvement to say, I learned this and I'm going to change my business as a result.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
NPS.
Yeah, that's NPS. And that kind of also defines the difference between NPS, the score, Net Promoter Score, and the Net Promoter System.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right. Because look, the metric doesn't matter. Fine. You don't like the likelihood to recommend question. Use overall satisfaction. I don't care. Use customer effort score. Use whatever. The question doesn't matter. And honestly, in today's world, as we're getting better with AI, as we're getting better with predictive analytics,
the question won't matter.
That score question's going to go away, and it's going to go away in a hurry.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't matter. It matters, what are you learning and what are you doing about it? What actions are you taking that are going to result in better customer retention, better growth, better revenue growth, better profit, right? That's why you're in business.
That's why you're in business. Yeah. That's it. That's it right there. So then how can our audience understand how to really benefit from using the Net Promoter System? You kind of touched on that already. Is by taking action on the information that's captured, not just scoring it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I alluded to a couple of these things, but to your point, here's where moving from the score to the system really can add value to your business, right? The first is the concept of the closed loop feedback, or the closed loop system in NPS philosophy. And for your listeners who aren't familiar with that, there's really two loops. There's the one-on-one loop to say, you gave me feedback, how am I going to respond, or how am I going to take action on your specific feedback? And then there's a bigger outer loop that says, 100 people have given me feedback, I'm going to digest that, I'm going to process that, and I'm going to make changes that benefit all 100.
Well said.
So, but to me, if you're gonna ask a customer for feedback, closed loop is non-negotiable. You need to do that, right?
Yeah.
If you come to my place of business, Roger, and you give me a complaint, if I ignore it or I don't do anything about it, guess what? You're probably not coming back.
Yep.
Worse yet, in today's social media day world, you're not
tell a whole
coming
bunch
back,
of people.
You're telling the entire world about the bad experience. So
in seconds, yes.
Right? In seconds, exactly. So if your customer gives you feedback, act on it. Right? Even if it's a survey and you have to call them back the next day, act on it.
Yeah, I was just adding to that. Thank them because it's a gift, and then act on it. That's right. That's right.
I love that. Feedback is a gift, 100%.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, and there's research out there that supports this. Even if you can't do anything about it, the mere act of saying, thank you for your feedback, and I apologize that you had a bad experience, that apology
goes a long way.
Goes further than the coupon you might give them, than the refund you might give them.
That hurts the business.
Apology and that human connection goes farther than anything else.
Here's another best practice I heard. I've learned about in experience too, with regard to that part of closing the loop. It's after you've captured the feedback, after you said thank you, after you've tried to do something about it. There may be 5 issues, but you can only address 3. It's telling everyone what you're doing, advertising the fact that, hey, you know what? We heard at Eric Smuda or us that we are not delivering X, Y, and Z. And so here's what we're going to do about it over the next few months. You can expect this, that, and the other. So it lets customers, even those customers who didn't engage in your survey or in your closed loop system, if you want to be technical, they now are aware that you're listening and you're willing to take action. And it changes the tenor of how they engage with you in the future and whether they're going to offer referrals or not. So I think that's amazing. Amazing
yeah,
stuff.
100%. One of the things that I did when I was at Hertz, now granted, we got 2.2 to 2.5 million surveys a year. Like, okay, our volume was ridiculous, right? Compared to some of the businesses of our listeners here today. But what we did was we set, to your point, we took all of the surveys over a course of a quarter and we said, all right, what are the 3 to 5 things at a macro level that we've learned from this?
Mm-hmm.
What actions are we putting in place? And then we sent an email back out to everyone saying, here's what we heard this quarter.
Boom.
Here's what we're doing about it. And here's when you should expect to see change.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
And that's what I'm talking about. So I've coined a term. I believe I coined it, right? Because I haven't seen anybody else use it. It's called CXC. CXY, as in CXC. It's a nice pun.
It's sexy.
That's CXC. That's CXC. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. Awesome stuff. So, in one of your articles, I read recommendations you gave with regard to getting benefit out of the Net Promoter System. You talked about the closed loop. We talked about team huddles.
We did talk about huddles.
To get team understanding. Tell us about text analytics, predictive analytics, and engaging promoters.
Sure. Yeah. Text analytics. I mean, this is the one that's changed the game in the last 5 years, and now with all of the AI advancements, we talked a few minutes ago about learning from your customers. Mm-hmm. Text analytics is now the tool that lets you do that, right? So whether it's surveys, whether it's call center feedback, whether it's website feedback, whether it's CRM notes, if you're a bigger business and have those any kind of feedback that customers give you, put that into a text analytics engine and say, okay, what are those top 3 things that are bubbling up that I need to go work on to make my business a better business, right? So that's the text analytics piece. The predictive analytics, and we were joking a few minutes ago about, hey, that NPS score is going to go away. The reality is, if you think about your surveys, right, and this is true across businesses, right? Some get a 5% response. Some might be lucky and get 20 or 25% response, and that's great. But here's the reality, right? Either 1 out of 20 of your customers are responding, or 1 out of 4 or 5 are responding. You're not getting feedback from the 100%. Majority of your customers. But with predictive analytics, you can look at, okay, who did I get feedback from? What's their feedback? What's their profile? What do they look like? I apply this to the other 80% of people that I didn't, right?
Yes.
Here's people that look and act the same. Here's people that may have had the same experience on the same day when I was out of the chicken cacciatore, right? So the predictive analytics is, how can I take the feedback that I did get from, call it 20% of my customers, and project that across the rest of my customers so that I know I'm working on the right things.
So just to underscore that too, that would line up with something I believe I introduced our guests to some podcast episodes ago about NPS segmentation. Yeah? Yeah, because now if we understand that a customer is either a promoter and we understand the type of revenue that they're driving in our business, or a passive or a detractor, then we can now apply predictive analytics, knowing that this is how they typically spend as a promoter. This is where they fall in terms of the top 20% in Pareto principle. And if we correct this issue that the promoters share, we can impact this much score, this much loyalty, which could lead to this much spend, and almost predict revenue going forward. Yeah,
absolutely. And so you teed up my 5th recommendation there, which was around engaging promoters. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So many times we spend all of our time and effort and energy trying to fix detractors and responding to detractors and solving problems. But the real growth engine for your company is, how do I engage and how do I activate those promoters? Because these are people.
I want you to say that again. This is something that's really key. So I want you to say that again.
Yep. The real growth engine for your company. How do you engage with, and how do you activate your promoters? And I'm going to share a few things with you why that's true. Right. One is, look, they're already your fans. They've told you they're your fans, right?
Yes.
They've 9 or 10. They've told you I'm a promoter. How do I get them to tell their friends, to tell their family? How do I get them to go on social media and tell a great story about my business? There's an interesting business in the UK, and I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. The CEO is Andy Cockburn, and I can't think of the name of the company right now. They started measuring the value of a promoter and a referral. So every time they got a new customer, they would ask, "Oh, how did you find out about us? Were you a referral from somebody? Were you,
advertised?" Yeah.
Right? And they would track those referrals. And what they found out is the value of a promoter was 2 to 3x what they actually spent with your business because of what their referrals were spending. So I referred 3 people, now they're spending more money. And guess what? Now those people referred someone else. So that links back to the original.
Yeah.
Right. So their value to you as a customer could be 2x, 3x, 5x.
Yeah, 10x even, really.
Probably, right?
Because there's also research out there showing that customers who are referred tend to spend about 16% more, represent about 25% more in profit, and they stay longer than the people who referred them. Yeah. So if you master, like you say, if you master those promoters, if you master those current customers who are loyal to you already, you've now amplified and totally exploded your opportunity for not only your customer retention, but your ability to grow.
Right. Yeah. Here's the second way that activating those promoters actually helps your profitability, right? So we just talked about enhancing the revenue. It also lowers your cost, right? If you've got promoters out there being your marketing and your sales force, guess what? You don't have to spend as much money on
customer acquisition
and customer acquisition.
Yeah.
So now your marketing costs go down while you're bringing in more customers.
And your cost to serve has the potential to go down as well, since you're dealing mostly with referred customers who've already identified the ideal type of customer for you. So you don't have to re-engineer your product or service for a new customer because they're picking someone who they know fits them and matches them. So it already fits you. Yeah. Right. Awesome.
When I was at Hertz, and I was running CX and CRM, one of my peers was running the digital team and was in charge of customer acquisition. Right? And think about the amount of money that a business like Hertz spends driving clicks, driving people to make a reservation. And he said to me one day, he's like, "Look, I want you to create as much customer retention as you can, because we only have a fixed number of cars.
Yeah.
More reservations you can create for me by keeping customers is fewer that I have to go fill and chase."
That's right.
Customers. He said, every person you save saves me money finding a backfill.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you take notes on that one, because that is a really critical one that's missed by many businesses, even businesses that are practicing customer experience. Because of course, not everyone's going to get the exciting results that a Disney may get, or an Apple may get, or an Amazon may get, because they don't have the same infrastructure or execution. However, there are some best practices that, when applied, you are bound to win. I believe the research says 80% of companies that practice customer experience strategy grow. How fast they grow is different, but they grow and they lead their peers, 80% of them. So it's a win-win-win, when you do it for customers, for you, and the employees.
For those in your audience who've read Fred Reichelt's books, right? There's lots of statistics there where he's looked at the 10-year stock price of those that are good at customer experience and practice customer experience strategies, best practices, and those who don't. The growth rates are astounding. The stock price appreciation is astounding. This works, folks. I mean, this works. So
yeah. So the key is the execution. The key is the execution and the consistency, because some fruits take 3 months to bear and some fruits take a year to bear. We just have to position ourselves in a way that we know that we're following the right things that'll give us the right outcomes. And that's where the consistency is important. You mentioned this before. It's about coordination. It's about consistency. And then, of course, we talked about the quality of employees and leadership. So awesome.
And the other reason consistency is important, right? Just like in our personal lives. Takes you years to build a reputation, takes you, many, many experiences.
Yes.
Takes you 5 minutes or one bad experience to ruin all of that. So
yeah,
that's the other reason consistency is key.
Yeah, I tend to remember a lot of statistics regarding customer experience because people have questions about it. And the one I heard about that is for every bad experience, it takes about 12 good experiences to erase the effect of one bad experience for a customer. So appreciate that level of detail too. Okay, we are moving along nicely here. Now, since we're talking about referrals, let's spend some more time there. Why is it so important for a multi-unit business environment? Why is it so important for C-suite to become adept at activating referrals? And what do you recommend? Why is that so?
Yeah, and look, I don't think this is unique to multi-unit businesses. I think this is all businesses, right? I mean, we talked about activating, promoting, taking advantage of word of mouth. Surveys show that today that people trust their friends and family more than they trust anybody else, right? And what we're seeing with the younger generations is they trust reviews and they trust social media more as well. So activating your promoters is really about how am I taking advantage of that word of mouth? How am I getting them to talk to their friends and family? How am I getting that onto social media? How am I getting them to leave a positive review? Because 4.8 stars means a lot more than 3.5 stars. It means a lot more than 2.5 stars. So, that's really what it's about. And then it goes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier. How do you save marketing dollars because they're now your marketing engine?
Right.
So, so I think that applies whether it's a multi-unit business or not. I think the scale can accelerate a lot faster with a multi-unit business. Right.
Yeah. So, something we miss a lot in the Caribbean, and I believe many businesses still don't give it enough importance, is the emotion and the role that emotion plays in customer experience and customer loyalty. Help us understand that a little bit based on your experience.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a famous quote that gets attributed to Maya Angelou all the time, right? The former poet laureate of the U.S. And side story, I did some research. She wasn't actually the first to say it, but she gets credit for it. But the quote is, people won't remember what you did, and people won't remember what you said, but people will remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
Right? So think about your best vacations, think about your best meals in the restaurant, think about your best hotel stays, think about your best doctor or dentist visits, right? It's not about what they did or what they said, it's how you felt when you walked out of there, right? Emotion is the driver of loyalty. You can create satisfaction. Satisfaction, it's important, but it really doesn't drive long-term growth, right? Because if you're satisfied, but you're not emotionally loyal, as soon as something better comes along, you're going to go try it. Or as soon as something that's equal but cheaper comes along, you're going to try it. Right? So satisfaction isn't a guarantee that your business is going to grow and stay healthy in the future. Getting to that emotional loyalty, Harley Davidson is the one I use all the time, but Disney's a great example. Lego's a great example. How many brands do you have where people are willing to go and put a tattoo of your brand all over their body? Right? They're going to say, I'm so loyal to this company that I am going to live my life and I'm going to die wearing their logo on my body. That's emotion. That's loyalty.
That's a great example. That's a great example. I wanted to touch on just to highlight for the audience that the difference between customer satisfaction and loyalty. Folks, you may have heard us talk about something in the past called hidden defection, where 20 to 30% a year of customers disappear without companies even knowing when or why. customer defection, your biggest group of customers who are the biggest risk for defection are those who are satisfied. Those who you've met their requirements, but you've not generated enough to make them loyal enough to even want to refer. They're always looking for the shiny new penny, something cheaper or equal in performance, that type of thing. So it's really critical that when you create an experience for a customer, that it creates an emotion that it evokes and invokes an emotion that makes them loyal to you. Because if they're just satisfied, you can lose them. Yeah, and then the cost of acquiring new customers will kill your revenue. Yeah.
Roger, I love that. And if, we've talked a lot about NPS. If you turn that into NPS language, it's your passives. That's your biggest opportunity, right?
Because they're satisfied. They are satisfied folks.
Right. How likely are you to recommend, hey, I gave it a 7 or 8. That seems pretty good. Those are the people you were just talking about that will seek an alternative if it's cheaper or if it's better, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, you can solve detractor problems, but the reality is a lot of them are going to churn, or a lot of them shouldn't have been your customer in the first place. It's just not the right fit. But those passives, that's where your opportunity for real growth is. Activate your promoters and move your passives into the promoters.
And always keeping revenue impact as your driving choice for who you focus on first and most urgently, right? Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. There is such a thing as good retention, right?
Yes.
If you're losing customers that cost you more to serve than you make off of it, fine, let them go.
Yeah. And you have to have a way to figure that out. And customer experience strategy allows us to do that. Now, I just want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier about, when we score in NPS, detractors, passives, and promoters, passives usually score 7s and 8s. Now, for those of us who struggled with math in high school, I'm not pointing at anyone, right? When you get a 70 or 80, you're very excited. But in loyalty, that's not going to help you. So don't be excited about 7s and 8s. Work for those 9s and 10s. Work for loyalty, because loyalty sticks and loyalty grows. Great. Awesome stuff, man. Awesome sauce, as they say. So we talked about retention. You mentioned something about lifetime value as a guide for decision making. I really want to talk about that. This is one of my favorite topics, and I think it's something we should be using more and talking about more. And what are the advantages of doing that for C-suite?
Yeah, so what I mean by using customer lifetime value to guide your decision making is prioritize the lifetime you're going to have with that customer, not just the transaction you're having that day, right? So think about a mom and pop restaurant. Think about your local restaurant, your local diner, right? Are you going to do everything you can to maximize the profit that day, or are you going to make sure that they have a good experience so they come back more often? So what happens if you accidentally drop food on them or spill wine on them? Right? Or do you comp their meal? Do you give them a free dessert? Right?
Pick up their dry cleaning.
Pick up their dry cleaning, whatever it is. Now, that probably makes that transaction unprofitable, or certainly lowers your profit on that transaction. But if it means they come back, if it means they tell people what a great experience they had, right? You're driving lifetime value, even though you may have sub-optimized this transaction. And that was something that we talked about in the rental car world all the time, because for those who don't understand that business, obviously a lot of your volume comes from your loyalty members.
Right.
A lot of those loyalty members are business travelers, and they're traveling on a negotiated rate that their company negotiated with your brand. So make the math easy, $50 a day, right?
Yeah.
$50 a day. Well, along comes a vacationer who does, might have had a reservation, maybe didn't have a reservation, showed up at the airport and needs to rent a car. I could charge that person $200 a day. Right? Or I could sell them insurance, or I could do this, or I could do that. and make a ton of money on this one transaction. Okay, you could, but if now you're sold out and that business traveler who travels 40 times a year shows up and doesn't get a car, okay, you maximize that transaction with that customer making $200, but you know what? This other guy's worth $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
And you just made him angry, right?
Wow.
Is that worth the trade-off? And so it's really thinking beyond that
the transaction
to what's the potential here? Do I know what this customer's worth? And do I know what the potential of this customer is worth in the long term?
Yes.
You know, and using that really to design your, you know, or to guide your decision making. But the caveat I'll throw in there is, then you need to think about your incentive structures and your bonuses and what management holds people accountable for.
Right. Well said. Yes, that's a good point.
Because, you know, back to that car rental example, if my incentive structure is pure profit or pure revenue, okay, then I'm going to go sell
short-term sell
$200 and I'm going to optimize that transaction. 7
insurances, baby seat. You don't even have a child.
Exactly. Yeah. So true. But right. And so are your incentive structures, are your management structures aligned to customer lifetime value, or are they aligned to maximize today and maximize the transaction? So there are implications down the road to, okay, if I'm going to think about long-term value, how does that play out in my structure, in my process, in my policies and things like that as well.
And that bleeds into what processes we invest in or divest in, the training we give our people, the risk assessment of our back office, you know, who's worth the risk because of the customer lifetime value versus who's not. So it really touches everything cross-functionally throughout the organization. And I hope the audience gets that from today and all the other podcasts that we do, is that customer experience strategy really is throughout the entire organization, and cross-functional participation is how it wins for your business as much as possible.
Well, and look, that's what makes customer experience and customer experience strategies so difficult, right? Because we as businesses organize ourselves in silos. There's sales, there's marketing, there's HR, there's finance, there's
production,
there's operations,
there's customer service,
there's customer care, customer service, right? Customer experience is the thing that runs horizontally across all of those things. And so how do we coordinate? How do we cooperate? How do we work together? How do we use the data or the knowledge that we have at our fingertips to guide our decision making versus versus what's the best thing for my silo?
Man, Eric, buddy, I wish we had like another 2-3 hours. I love learning, but I know you've got a life. So I'm going to try to let you go.
Let's do it again. We'll schedule another hour some other time.
No problem. I may come back to you next year for that, because this was really, really good. So final question, and I always like to end with this. Do you have any final thoughts or words of encouragement you'd like to share with our audience about the value and urgency of understanding and adopting customer experience strategy?
Yeah, I mean, look, it starts with your customer experience strategy has to align to your business strategy. What are your business goals? What are your business objectives? It has to align to that, because otherwise
it's customized is what you're saying. It's customized to your business is what you're saying.
It's customized to your business,
right?
Because otherwise you're working against the natural flows of the business and you're not going to be successful. So it has to be aligned there. And then the other, we've talked a lot about, and I know you have talked about on your podcast, right? The C-suite love language.
Yeah.
What you're doing in your CX strategy has to align to revenue and profit. So 4 easy things. Is it helping me acquire more customers? Is it helping me retain more customers? Is it helping me drive better lifetime value, either through longer retention or more upsells and more cross-selling products and services?
Mm.
Or is it helping me lower my cost to serve? You mentioned it earlier, Roger, right? Is it lowering the cost it takes? So your CX needs to be tied to at least one of those things, if not multiple. Right? Because ultimately, that's how you speak the C-suite love language is, I can now tie it to growth. I can tie it to dollars or revenue. I can tie it to profit. I can tie it to cost. Right. So, the other, and we've talked about this, is just look, it's far cheaper to keep a customer than go get a new one.
Yep. Yes,
put your efforts into customer retention, put your efforts there and not on, allowing the leaky bucket to happen and we'll just go acquire more. That's just an expensive way to do business. So,
yes,
shift your mindset.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm passionate about, and I'll close with this, but we talked a minute ago about working horizontally across the business, and we talked at the beginning about coordination. I am passionate about having a governance process in your CX strategy. What I mean by governance is, how do we get all of the moving parts together? So how do I sit at the table with the head of digital, the head of operations, the head of HR, the head of communications, the head of sales, the head of customer care, and sit down and say, how are we going to tackle this together? Right? How do we drive focus on what's important to the customer? How do we drive alignment on these are the things as a business that we're going to work on? How do we give it visibility across all these silos so that we're not working vertically, we're working horizontally. Everybody has access to the same information.
Yes.
And the other thing that governance does is it creates accountability. If you have to go back in front of your peers once a week, once a month, whatever your frequency is, I got that done or I didn't get that done, guess what you're more likely to do?
You're likely to get it done. Yeah, you're gonna get that done. No one can stand embarrassment more than more than one or two times. Yeah. So yeah. Right. Eric, wow, man, this is awesome. We should record this.
This was fun.
Thank you so much for your time. I know time is premium with somebody of your quality. So I appreciate you saying yes to us and making this difference and trying to save the world with customer experience. Who knew? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the IAM CX podcast. This was a powerful episode. And thank you again to Eric Smuda, who offered his expertise, his experience, and insights. We appreciate you. We thank you. Stay tuned. We have a lot going on in our next episode. So follow us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn at Island Analytics and Marketing, or the IAM CX Podcast, hashtag on both of those. You can find our podcast there. You can find our free CX sensitivity assessment on LinkedIn as well, at my profile page, whichever. But we hope you continue to engage and we hope you continue to share. Thank you so much. This was another episode of the IAM CX Podcast. I am Roger Nicholas, Director of Customer Experience at Island Analytics and Marketing. Thank you. Have a great day and go win.